and we all accept that mathematics is a language and a universal language, then we are discovering someone else's language. And so maths goes beyond nature. Does that sound like someone? Does that sound like someone we're trying to evidence the existence of? And so mathematics is an evidence that points towards God. And that's why the new atheist movement is dead. And that's why Generation Z are flooding into the churches. Because we have beaten the atheists in argument. Sorry? Okay. Is this a question or is it a prelude to a conversation? Come in. Right. So, how do I know God exists? I know that God exists for a number of reasons. The first and most important to me will mean absolutely nothing to you. And I recognize that, which is my own personal subjective experiences of the works of God in my life. The second reason, and this is where I would engage you in a discussion, is that when we investigate nature, when we look into nature, we see clear factoids, facts that can only be explained by positing the idea of a creator, by positing a mind that is outside of creation. And then, final reason, which again for me is of the most personal importance, is the idea of Jesus Christ's resurrection. If Jesus Christ rose from the dead, atheism is false. Christianity is true. End of discussion. Jesus Christ didn't rise from the dead. I am wasting my time. I might as well become an atheist and just do.
Sorry. No, is that me, yeah?
Yeah, sorry.
And just do.
Do you mind picking it up?
There you go.
Thank you, Bob.
And just do what you want. So, what do you want to say to that?
Who created the creator?
Okay, so you're not actually going to respond to what I said.
What? You talked about creation, right? But creator. The second point.
Right.
So I say, who created the creator?
Okay.
There's always creation here.
Right.
Genesis.
Okay,
right?
so you haven't engaged with what I've said, but I will answer your question and then I'll make some elaborating points. So, who created the creator? Obviously, as Christians, we reject the notion that the creator has a creator. This is a self-contradictory statement. When we say that God is the creator, we mean in the most absolute sense possible that there is nothing that he has not created, and that he alone is responsible for all creation, and that because he is responsible for all creation, he himself has no creator. But, ladies and gentlemen, let me elaborate one of the arguments about creation pointing to the creator. When we investigate nature scientifically, the way that we have come to describe nature is mathematically. Guys, please, sorry, bring your camera forward. Don't push people backwards. Yeah? Don't push people backwards, please. So when we use mathematics, we're using a language that we have learned from nature. This is not a language that we've invented. It's one that we've discovered. And the reason why we know that is because all cultures, even though they use different languages and different symbols, have used the same mathematical rules. And so a mathematician in one culture can talk to a mathematician in another culture so long as they have, a human symbology that's in common with one another. That means that the language is not ours. It is something that comes from another mind, and all languages come from another mind. And since it isn't coming from our mind, it must be coming from a mind other than ours. And as it is a universal language we've learned in nature, it points towards a creator.
So it's a universal language, the mathematics. It doesn't say that God exists. It's a true...
Right, so let's just think this through. You've accepted that mathematics is a universal language. One second.
I have a problem.
One second. Let me finish. No. Let me finish. No, let me finish.
Can we make a conversation?
Yeah, no, let's have a conversation. But I'm making a point because yeah. But then you stopped. So let me finish, and then you can reply. So if you accept that mathematics is a universal language, where did we learn that language? How did we learn that language?
I think language is a human idea, by the way that we can communicate. This is the way that we can communicate with each other. We are very intelligent creatures, and language is the way that we can speak to each other, communicate to each other. We invented language. So you're talking about God in a humanistic language, which you can perceive as a human being. But you say God is, is something almighty or something, out of space. I don't know how do you perceive God. But how can you perceive this entity if you are just a human being? Language, and you are speaking in a humanistic language to describe God, which is, this is the contradiction. You see, this is the thing that you can't explain. You understand what I'm
Can I reply?
to say? Yes.
Okay. So you haven't engaged with my second point. So I'll ask you to engage with this point when you speak next. I asked you a very simple question. I asked you to explain to me, how have we learned mathematics? I put it to you that mathematicians who speak on this often are the best people placed to talk about the language of mathematics. And invariably, mathematicians do not say that we are inventing maths. They say that we are discovering mathematics. If we're discovering it, it means that its existence is independent from our own. Like Columbus discovered America. Like I discovered Marble Arch the first time that I came here. Its existence wasn't predicated on me. My discovery was predicated on its existence. And so if mathematicians are discovering mathematics, and we all accept that mathematics is a language and a universal language, like you've said, then we are discovering someone else's language. And the whole argument that I'm making is, if we are discovering someone else's language, and that language is encoded into nature, it is reasonable for us to assume that there is a mind behind the language we find in nature. That can't be our mind, because mathematics isn't our language, so it has to be another mind, and that mind we call God. Now, to answer your point, to answer your point, which is that we talk about God with human languages.
I want to remember what
we absolutely do talk about God with human languages. The way that I describe God in English is not going to obviously be like an Ethiopian. Let me finish. You have 2 points. Yes, correct, because you made a separate point.
I want to remember.
Bro, relax, right? If you didn't want to get into the heat, don't enter into the ring. So, in terms of human languages, you're not engaging me. In terms of human languages, as Christians, we believe that all human beings have the capacity to speak of God in their own language. We're not like Islam that does Arab imperialism, where you can only talk about God in Arabic, or to talk about God best in Arabic. Every culture can speak about God in their own languages, because every language is honorable and native. But you asked me the question not about how we talk about God in an earthly language, but how we can know God exists, and that's why I raised the question about mathematics.
The second point I didn't understand.
It's a reply to your first point.
The first point that you said, engaging, there's a problem in the point when we are talking about a universal language, and then you jump. It must be another, other creation language. Someone that created it. I'm not. It's not conceivable for me because I can't jump from because there's a universal language, so there must be a creator for this language. No, we don't. The main point, what I want to say is that we don't know the answer to the world. We don't know the answer why we live. We don't know we are human beings. For me, all the religious people that believe in God, maybe God himself, because they know the answer for the creation, for not creation, I'm using your language, for the reason of the world, for the world. We are not, we are just human beings. We don't know the main, science doesn't give us, it can give us, Darwin and the evolution on this earth, maybe, don't know. There are a lot of people that contradict these ideas, but the main thing, the big question about life, about the universe, we don't know. We don't know, a bang or something. We just, assumptions. We don't know. Probably science, not in our lifetime, will answer these questions. I don't know if in any time in the future would be answered. I don't think so, because we are too small. We are human beings, and you can't jump from a universal language to a creator language.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Can I reply?
Yeah.
Okay, so actually I disagree. If the premises are correct, the conclusion is correct. He needs to tell me which premise is wrong. Is mathematics a universal language? Well, he already accepts that premise. We've got him on record as saying so. Is that language something we have learned from nature? Is that premise, does he dispute that premise, that we're learning it from nature? Is it something that is therefore encoded in nature? Do languages come from a mind? If mathematics is not from our mind, but we are learning it from nature, and all languages come from a mind, then it is reasonable to say that another mind has given us a language, and that other mind we can call God. You can also call it whatever you want. You can call it the spaghetti monster if you prefer.
Sorry, the phone is overheating.
Right? I don't care what you call it, but it's acknowledging that the language comes from another mind.
Apologies.
So my challenge to you is to tell me which premise you disagree with. Because if all my premises are correct, then my conclusion is also correct.
Talking about perception, about you say it must be because the mathematics is right, so there must be a God.
I didn't say that.
So what did you say?
I'll walk you through it. Do you accept that mathematics is a language?
By your terms, maybe.
What do you mean by my terms? I'm asking you,
Because
by your
it's
terms.
not
Do you
relevant.
accept?
It's not
No, it
relevant.
really is relevant because we're talking about whether mathematics shows another mind.
No, you put mathematics into the discussion. I didn't.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm giving you asked me the question.
Asked-
Wait, you asked me the question, how do we know that the creator exists?
Okay.
So you asked me to give you evidence. I'm giving you evidence. Now you're saying, oh, you're just making it up.
No, it's not an evidence.
Answer the question.
Okay.
Do you accept that mathematics is a language?
Okay, I will go with you.
So yes.
Yes.
Right. Do you accept that all languages come from minds?
Yes.
Right. Do you accept that we are discovering mathematics or learning mathematics from nature?
Yeah. But what is nature?
Yes. Did you all hear that? Yes.
But
So
what is nature?
I'm coming to it.
Okay.
So, we've accepted that it's a language. We've accepted that it's a universal language. We've accepted it that we are learning it from nature. In other words, that it is coded into nature. Right. Think about that. You asked me what is nature. Nature is everything that is. It's everything that is. The trees,
How do you
your
perceive
shirt.
that it is? How do you perceive in your mind, in your own language?
We're not going to lose sight of the argument we're making.
Pardon?
We're not going to lose sight of the argument that we're making. How do we perceive it? We perceive it in our minds.
Yeah,
Yes.
Right.
Through our senses.
Okay,
So nature is real. It is a
By
reality.
perception.
Yes, through perception.
But you're a human being, just a human being. It probably limits in your perception.
If I, not that I would, and by
you know
no
that
means.
You are limit. You
Are we going to shout over one another, or do you want to have a conversation?
Okay.
Do you want a shouting match or a conversation? Make a choice, because I can do both.
It's a
Right.
discussion, you know.
Right, well, have a don't interrupt.
Sometimes
Then don't
people-
interrupt.
Sometimes people interrupt.
Right. So,
Sometimes.
so the three premises you've agreed with. If those three premises are correct, then that means we have to find another mind behind the encoding of mathematics into nature that we are learning from, that we accept is another language. So what do you think that mind is?
I don't know.
Right. Do you believe, would you agree that it is reasonable?
You're stopping me. You're
Go on, I'm not stopping you,
yes,
you're just
yes.
not following an
I
argument.
want to say that the perception of the humanistic mind is limited. This is what you're talking about. Things that you can't even conceive because you are too.
Bro.
You are a human being. You are born and you die. That's it. That's it. That's what we have. We don't know what there's something else. We don't know. Maybe you are right, but
You've agreed with all the
it's
premises.
agnostic,
No, you've agreed with all the premises. So what?
but it's not
So if
relevant.
all the yes, it
It's
is
not
relevant.
relevant. It's not
How is
relevant.
it not relevant
Because
to
the perception
identify?
and the
One second.
perce-
How is it not relevant?
to answer.
How is it not relevant to say that we have got a physical, conceptual proof of the mind of a creator?
Because physical, mind, and everything is a human ideas. The language of you talked about language.
Mathematics is an objective reality.
No. But to talk about
Mathematics
nature,
is an objective reality.
To talk about mathematics.
Mathematics is an
but
objective
your
reality.
It's your perception about the world. About the
Mathematics
nature.
is an objective reality.
It's a perception, and
It is not a perception.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. And here's
Yeah.
why we know it
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah.
Here's why we know mathematics is not a perception. It's not a perception because different mathematicians from different cultures have all
Okay,
come
I
across
understand it.
the
But
same
it's not
mathematical
answer my
rules
idea.
independently of
My
one
view.
another. If they are coming across the same mathematical rules independently of one another, even though they
All of you-
use
all are human
different
beings.
symbols
All are human beings.
and different languages,
Everybody
that
is
means
human-
that
is a
the
human.
rules
The rules
are
that human invented.
independent from our perceptions.
But you talk about
Because
human beings.
truly independent perceptions often conflict, often contradict.
And
Like,
sometimes not.
for instance, we might all disagree about who's winning this argument. He has the perception he's winning. I have the perception I'm winning.
Right, we have
But
human
the
beings.
point is, no mathematician disagrees with the idea that 2 + 2 equals
But both
4.
mathematicians are
And
human
it does
beings.
not matter what language they speak
Right,
in
right.
or
I'm not
what
talking about the
symbols they use to
I'm not talking about
describe
symbols.
the rule.
I'm not talking about the symbols.
Can
I'm
you
not
actually engage with what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And since you have
but I'm not talking,
interrupted me
you asked me.
consistently, I will interrupt you at pleasure because you need to learn manners
Okay,
about
okay,
not
okay.
interrupting.
You are diminishing me all the time. Okay, great.
Don't interrupt then.
Yeah. No, it's not.
You did interrupt.
It's not
When I was talking, you
honorable,
were interrupting
discussion.
consistently.
It's an honorable discussion. You control the conversation. You have obviously.
You asked me a question.
Obviously, you do.
How do
it's
you
not
know
your first time
God
here.
exists?
Obviously, it's not your first time.
And
here.
so
You are used to
I
do
gave
it.
you
are used to do
evidence,
it.
and then you said
But
the
I'm not
evidence
with
is
them.
irrelevant
I'm not with
to
them.
the
Yes,
conversation.
It's irrelevant.
On
It's
in what
irrelevant.
way?
In that even the two mathematicians that come from China or come from England, they are both human beings. Okay.
That's got nothing to do with its
That's got to
relevance.
do, because
No, it hasn't.
The
Do
perception
termites
is
do
limited,
mathematics?
because both
Can we have a
human being is
conversation with a
limited
donkey
creature.
about
It's a
mathematics?
limited-
No,
donkey-
we
donkey
can't.
is a different creature.
No,
Donkey
we
is a
can't.
different creature.
You can't. You haven't addressed the argument. You've just dismissed it. And your reason for trying to dismiss it, you're trying to dismiss it, is by saying that the two are human. The two being human only strengthens the point that I made. That human beings from different cultures have discovered the same mathematical rules independently of one another.
They are all human beings. The perception
and
is
what's
limited.
that got to do with the objectivity of math?
Limited.
What is that got to do with the objectivity of mathematics?
What it's got to do? It's got to do that we can know what about the word objectivity. The word mathematics is a human being, a mind.
What does mathematics? What does objectivity mean?
It's our perception.
What does objectivity mean?
I don't know.
Why are you arguing about it then?
I'm not arguing about it.
Yes, you are.
I'm telling you that
you're saying that mathematics
you don't.
You're saying that it's about human perception.
You don't address this view. You only go to mathematics, which is not relevant.
Do you like being interrupted?
You don't address.
Would you like to have a calmer conversation? Would you? Yes. Would you like to have a calmer conversation where we don't interrupt one another?
Me all the time.
Would you like to have a calmer conversation where we don't interrupt you? Yes. Don't be rude and interrupt people then. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. We can have a calmer conversation if you want to.
Okay.
Right. I'm going to now let you speak without interruption. Don't interrupt me when I next speak. Over to you.
I say what I want to say, but say it again. Everything that you speak about, mathematics and nature and everything, we are human beings. If we live in China, if we live in Germany, if we live in Africa, okay? We are human beings. Human beings are limited. How do we know? We know because we have pains. We are born, we are die. We know that we are limited. We are only a few years in this world. This is our, and we have a limited perception and perceive. So, all the other things that we speak about, that there's an objectivity in the world. Objectivity is a mind, a perception mind of human being. Human being talks about subjectivity and objectivity. This is what we are. We invented. We are all the things we are talk about our invention basically. We don't know what is all about it. We don't really know. Science don't give us answers, and of course, religions that are, taking from books that people wrote back 1,000, 2,000 years ago. Is 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. Is not.
Thank you.
To base our ideas about books that we know. There are researchers that said about it, that people wrote it. And you even find contradiction in the Bible between one book and another book on the same events. So talk about all the things. It's useless. It's irrelevant. We don't know the answer to our life. Even if you speak about mathematics, about objectivity, about nature, there's nothing. I'm sorry to say, it's our tragedy. But we need to accept it because.
Can I reply?
You can believe in fairy tales.
Can I reply now?
Yes.
Now notice I didn't interrupt him at all there. Yes. Let's see if he can pay me the same courtesy.
Okay. But I can answer.
No. Don't interrupt. Don't.
No, I want.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Within 2 seconds of me talking.
No,
within 2 seconds of me talking.
No.
Within 2 seconds of me talking.
No. I won't interrupt you.
The next time that he talks, I'm going to interrupt him at leisure.
Yes, that's why you won't interrupt.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the question of human limitations about perception have no bearing upon the question of the objectivity of maths. Mathematicians would be the first to tell you that they speculate that the field of maths is limitless, infinite, universal, and absolute. Does that sound like someone?
Yes,
does that sound like someone's language? that it would be infinite and endless and absolute. Now, ladies and gentlemen, so the limitations of human perception have no bearing on the objectivity of mathematics nor the scope of mathematics. The reason why we know mathematics is objective is because every culture has used maths to some degree, to some level. And all of them have used the same mathematical rules, independently of one another. And so we can see that this is not something that we're inventing, it's something that we are discovering. And who is our teacher?
Jesus.
Our teacher is nature. Nature is the one that's teaching us mathematics. We're learning maths through engagement with nature. Then, ladies and gentlemen, once we establish some rules of mathematics, we build on those rules, discovering other rules of mathematics. And so maths goes beyond nature. Does that sound like someone? Does that sound like someone we're trying to evidence the existence of? And so mathematics is an evidence that points towards God. Now, he says that we're limited in our individual scope, we are. But human beings learn by civilizations and we build on knowledge. And so as we build on knowledge, we establish true principles through trial and error. And we therefore are establishing that there are true principles by which to live by. Moral principles, epistemological principles, doctrinal principles, principles of value. My opponent's agnosticism and his latent atheism can give us none of these things. He simply says you don't know, you can't know. Can we know that wiping out 6 million Jews is a bad thing? I think we can. But we can not through any democratic process, because democracy put Hitler into power. We know by revelation, by that revelation that came from God, by that same revelation that said in the Psalms that the heavens and the earth declare the glory of God and his handiwork. Day and night they pour forth speech. Across the world, in every nation and tongue, there is not a language in which it is not heard. Mathematics is an objective language that points towards the mind of a creator. If you are pointing towards the mind of a creator, you have an evidence to God's existence. If you would like to reply.
Most of the things at the beginning was you're repeating your previous ideas and views. The only one new thing that you said is that human being can study, can learn. And I agree. They can study, can learn in their own limited ideas and perception. in their language that they are talking and the perception of what the words means. This is the only things that we are learning now. We can learn new things because we don't know. So the world is probably many things to find out. The people in the ancient times or the ancient times when the Bible was invented. And at the time of the Middle Ages, people didn't know much. So they were living in these times. And after that, they begin to develop and to find out things. But does it say that they know what it's all about? The world, the universe, even the word universe and world is a human idea, is a human invention. Because it's in our mind, we can't, as I said again, you can't engage in the idea that the perception is limited, because we know that probably the science tells us that there are many moons there are in the universe, but can understand it, even perceive it is a bit more than awkward.
Can I reply?
I just last point. Yes, I agree with you about right and wrong, because right and wrong is a humanistic feeling. Because as Shakespeare said, you know, if you punch me, I will feel the pain.
If you prick me.
Okay, I'm not. And you talked about Hitler and 6 million Jews. Of course, this is a wrong thing, a wrongdoing. Of course, because to kill people, to murder people, we need to be humanistic in our connection with each other.
Can I reply?
Just a minute. I didn't interrupt you. And it doesn't anything with God or anything that it's talking about, bad and good, humanistic style. That's what we can by our feelings, by our. This is what we can perceive. The only thing that we can perceive.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you heard very tired atheistic, humanistic arguments. Let me just demonstrate why that argument. Notice is interrupting.
My English is not articulate.
Notice is interrupting.
That's what I want to say. My English is not
so
articulate.
let's just be clear. Let's just be clear. These are tired atheistic arguments. And the reason why they're tired atheistic arguments, ladies and gentlemen, is for the following. He's just made an argument that it's all about relative perception. It's all relative perception. How can we know the meaning of everything? Because we're so limited in our perception, and it's all so subjective. But then in the next breath, he said that the wiping out of 6 million Jews was wrong. And we could all know that. How could we all know that the wiping out of 6 million Jews was wrong if we're all limited to our relative perception? The only way that we can all know is because of objective reality that is shared by all of us, that points to a common meaning. And by a common meaning, it gives a common narrative. And I agree with him, to quote Shakespeare, if you prick me, do I not bleed? And I don't know the rest, so I'm not going to misquote it. But the point is, there is a human experience that is true to us all. And my argument, if he had bothered to follow it, was that mathematics is part of that human experience. And part of that human experience is that we have learned a language in nature that is not our own. And he agreed with me that any language that is not our own must still have a mind. And so if the language is not our own, it must be the mind of the Creator. And so what we see is the atheist agnostics contradict themselves when it comes to human conduct. They'll tell you that truth claims about metaphysics are bogus, fictional, and relative. Then when you ask them, is wiping out 6 million Jews a bad idea? They'll say, yes, of course it is. It absolutely is. It absolutely is a moral humanist value. But you can only have an absolute moral human value if you believe that there's an absolute universal truth upon which you can build that moral value. And so he wants to say absolute claims about metaphysics are false, but then assert values based upon absolute metaphysics. And that's why the new atheist movement is dead, and that's why Generation Z are flooding into the churches, because we have beaten the atheists in argument. Their arguments have collapsed because of their own inconsistencies. If he was consistent, in saying that our human perceptions are limited, that it is all relative, then he would say that human morality and ethics is limited, subjective and relative. In which case, if he was consistent, he couldn't say that wiping out 6 million Jews was wrong. Just for the record, I agree with him, he's right, wiping out 6 million Jews was wrong, but my understanding of why it was wrong is consistent. He is doing a cognitive dissonance of denying the foundations of the values that he wants to assert. Over to you.
Subjectivity, objectivity, again, it's in your mind, okay? It's in your mind. There's a perception as a human being. And now, morality about good and bad should be, of course, one. And because, as I said, you feel the pain, you know what is to murder people, 6 million Jews, a lot. And this is, of course, a horrible thing, not a bad thing. Atrocities to no end. But it's not because there's a God in the whatever. Because we know that it's a bad thing, because we know we don't want to die. We don't want to die. We don't want our family to die. We enjoy it. It's our, as human beings. It doesn't have anything to do with objectivity or relatives ideas. Nothing to do with it. Nothing. Only the feel that we know it's a bad thing to murder people, because we know that we don't want to be killed, to be murdered. So if you do it to another person, doesn't matter who he is. If it's not self-defense, and you agree with me that the Nazis, you pay attention to me, and the Nazis didn't do it as a self-defense. They talked about the Jews that were the menace of the world, but they killed them, they murdered them in cold blood by masses. So this is my point. You can't say anything about objectivity. It's not relevant. Mathematics, relativity, objectivity, subjectivity, it's all in our minds. All in our minds. And I'm not jumping from one position to another. There are two positions. A main position is this: we don't know. Okay? The other one is we have a morality. We have good and bad in our very small world, because we feel and we know how to feel pain. Shakespeare, Shylock talks about in, I'm not sure, from Venice. This is the main point. I don't think you can.
Can I reply? Okay, so he said we have good and bad. Did you hear that? Who defines good and bad? How do we define it? To argue that there is good and bad in the world means that you are arguing that there is an absolute truth. To argue that it is completely wrong to kill 6 million Jews, and I agree it is, means that you're saying there's an absolute truth. If you're saying that there's an absolute truth, you're saying that it isn't relative, it's objective. If you're saying that it's objective and it's not relative, then you are accepting the idea of objective truths. The premise of my argument is based that mathematics is an objective truth. And so if mathematics is, and we're going to end this conversation here, if mathematics is an objective truth, an objective reality, it is a language that we are discovering objectively, then that means it is not our language, but all languages must have a mind. And since mathematics is a language that we are learning from nature, meaning it's encoded in nature, and all languages must have minds, therefore it is not our language. Nature was there before us, The mathematics in nature was there before us. And so we're discovering someone else's language. That means another mind. That means God. We've given clear evidence. His arguments are broken down. His arguments are broken down to be inconsistent and irrational, asserting and dismissing the same premises in the same sentence. Everything is relative, it's all subjective, we have limited perception, but there is good and bad, and there is right and wrong, and there is definitely a moral judgment that is absolute on the Jews. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my argument about why it was wrong, and notice he interrupted again. Notice he was interrupted there. Notice he was interrupted there. Ladies and gentlemen, is that he's saying that this idea that murder is wrong is not from God. Well, where did we get it from? Where did we get it from? Cultures have murdered people for centuries. The idea of the intrinsic nature of every human being is a Judeo-Christian idea. The idea that every human being is of equal dignity is a Judeo-Christian idea. It is not found in every culture, in every religion, in every belief system. It is something that comes particularly from Judeo-Christian teaching. Humanists are only borrowing the moral scaffolding of Christians. Without Christianity, they wouldn't have an ethical system. The idea of humanists, the idea that humanists are saying that all human beings are of value is a Christian belief. Not something that the humanists invented or reasoned their way to. They borrowed it from Christianity. Simply asserting it without knowing the history of the idea doesn't help your case. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Right, we're going to go on to another topic.